Hello and welcome. Today we'll be doing a quick review of the DELL Zino HD and a short deconstruction of the machine from the top, and a little on if you should buy one or anything with similar specs. This particular machine sports an AMD Athlon Neo X2 6850E at 1.8 GHz with 2 cores, 2 threads. It also has 4 GB of DDR2 at 800 MHz, an ATI Radeon HD 3200 integrated graphics, and Windows 7 64-bit Home Premium Service Pack 1. The tops are interchangeable with 10 different colours, although Dell didn't seem to advertise it too much, with only one mention on the product page. Some models had slower Neo X2s and 3GB of RAM, which meant only 32-bit Windows. The GPU was upgradable from factory for $75, but there were often better offerings for only $50 more. On the front is a slimline DVD burner, 3.5mm headphone jack, 2 USB 2.0 ports and an SD card reader. Things are not looking too great competition-wise for this small form factor machine. At 8 inches by 8 inches, it would sit nicely on an office desk or in a living room table. The I/O is very simple with the exception of the eSATA ports for connecting hard drives, great for someone who works away from the office or takes their multimedia with them. Around the back we have one headphone jack, one microphone jack, 1 gigabit Ethernet port, 2 eSATA ports, 1 VGA port, a HDMI port which I believe is 1.2, and a power port for the 65-watt power brick. The button at the top opens the lid, and the small 50mm fan cools the CPU and is the only cooling offered in this case, and because of that the fan noise is very little indeed. Time for a bit of testing. I started with CCleaner to remove unwanted software and anything suspicious to reduce background processes, hoping it would cut down CPU usage, which would be important especially on a dual core without hyperthreading and a CPU clock of 1.8 GHz. I also use CCleaner to clean up the registry errors, hoping for smoother operation. With the AVG antivirus already installed on the machine, I ran an antivirus scan, but it brought back nothing to concern. I tried to run a disk defrag, but it would have taken 23 hours. After all that, I think it's time for some benchmarks. I started off with Cinebench R15. The benchmark took a total of 18 minutes to run, with a final Cinebench score of 39. It wasn't really worth running the benchmark after all. The clip shown in the video is played at 4 times the normal speed, so you can imagine how bored I was watching it. I run MSI off the burner just for a bit of fun, see what was under the hood, and it told a very miserable tale. Nothing adjustable as you would imagine from an integrated GPU, but even more abysmal are those clock speeds and memory clock speeds. My lord, I don't think I've ever seen clocks so low. I wasn't joking earlier when I said things weren't looking great for this little machine. This model comes fitted with a 1TB Seagate drive, 7200 RPM. This looks to be one of the higher models without the upgraded GPU, or someone might have changed it out at some point. The hard drive is incredibly noisy. I think it would probably overcome a movie on a TV. You might have to have your TV pretty loud. It reminds me of the IDE era of hard drives, like spinning roulette marbles around in a cup. And I think these disk mark results say it all really. It's time to take it apart. So that button I told you about on the back, press it once and the top will flip up. Remove one screw at the rear on the cover you find underneath, just by the antenna port for the Wi-Fi. Flip open the lid to one side, being careful because the antennas are attached to the Wi-Fi card and it can be quite fiddly if trying to get them back in because they're very small. Disconnect the slimline DVD player by removing the red SATA cable and unscrewing the one screw that holds it in place, and then slide it out the front of the case. The next step is to remove the power button from the hard drive enclosure. There is one screw holding it in place. When putting back into place, it will only align one way. To remove the hard drive bay, you need to unscrew it from the motherboard. There is one screw located deep down in the case on the bottom left and the top right. Once you have unscrewed them, you slide the drive bay to the right, releasing the hooks and pulling it out. Here is where these screws are located, just in case you are unsure. From here you can see the top side of the internals, the one heat pipe that cools the CPU and the GPU, the small heatsink that takes care of it, along with the 50mm fan, which is incredibly quiet indeed. You can see at the top right I did accidentally disconnect one of the Wi-Fi antennas and it was a great pain to get it back into place. I would have loved to take it all apart as I think the RAM is underneath, but I don't have any thermal paste to replace when I take the CPU cooler off. My plan is to sell this machine, so I really don't want to break it too much. so I'm unsure if the RAM is upgradable or not. It could be soldered onto the motherboard, or it could be DIMM slots. The CPU would seem it's replaceable, as it looks like there is a socket underneath rather than being soldered to the motherboard, so maybe there could be some light for this little machine. The main question is, should we buy used, old, prehistoric hardware? The answer really is no. I couldn't get it connected to the internet no matter what I tried. The underwhelming Cinebench score really does nothing for confidence. The transfer speeds are rubbish, it's noisy and slow. The only upside is the 1TB hard drive. It's a lot of space, so you could probably take it out and put it in your main computer or something. Oh, and the size is quite surprising as well. It's like having a paving slab, but like thicker and smaller. Video playback wasn't too terrible at 720p, although I've read reviews that 1080p really struggled on this machine. I couldn't get any games, unfortunately, because I couldn't get onto the internet, but I did play some solitaire. Dragging the cards around would lag it out sometimes, and it was just choppy. I guess the main thing to note here really is, just remember, old hardware is cheap for a reason. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike, leave a comment if you like. I'll try and get hold of some more hardware soon and see what I can do. Thanks.